Good evening, guys. It is Saturday night. It is Pontificating with Pete on Revolutionary Change. We hope you guys are ready because we've got a lot to get to tonight. And as I have been saying, even though I think it's been a good day in terms of our numbers being at least somewhat believable, I would ask you all, if you are here, if you haven't already, please be so kind as to smash that like button. Please make sure you are subscribed. Make sure that you click that bell. And let's get this out there to as many people as we can. As you know, and now that I'm thinking about it, I realized where we really need to start this evening. I have been saying for a very long time, and I'm going to keep saying it, it kind of hit me recently. And so, yes, I've already seen it in the chat. Yes, I am on the mend. I went to the doctors yesterday. It turns out that I do have a bacterial infection sickness. And so I am on Z-Pack, and it's definitely had an impact pretty fast. So here's hoping by Monday I should be back to normal. So, still going to tough it out tonight because it is Saturday. With that being said, it should not come as any surprise to anybody that Israel has already broken the Iran deal, which should not come as any surprise. As we have pointed out, the top priority with this deal being solidified is that Israel could no longer attack Lebanon, which ostensibly means that their greater Israel project no longer can be conceived. And so, without even the blink of an eye, not even waiting 24 hours, they made it very clear that they are not going to adhere to that rule. So if anyone can express the sentiment of how Israel truly feels, despite what many others want to believe, is that there's good Israelis out there. They're all just kind of misunderstood. Ben Gvir, the prime minister of, what is his title? Prime Minister of something or other. But Colin, I need Ben Gvir's statement, because this is kind of the preempt that I think a lot of people were looking for, to see exactly what they were going to do. Everyone knew that when the Zionists started coming out and saying this is a terrible deal, how could they do such a thing? Don't you realize that this is our greatest ally? No, they're not. They're our greatest enemy. They say keep your friends close and your enemies closer, and we've certainly kept our enemy as close as possible for a very long time. Gvir may be at the most extreme end of where the Israelis typically sit, but this is something where we cannot lose sight of how serious this problem is. Because those types of people are the ones who always seek power, and then the ones who get their hands on it, and then they're willing to do the most sadistic, insane, genocidal, if you will, type of behavior. And this is essentially where we are now. And I would like to think that I was being somewhat prophetic when I said that the Iranians have basically given us an ultimatum that we really have no other option but to make a choice. And that choice is very simple. It's either our economy or it's Israel. We can't have both. Iran has made it very clear that the Strait of Hormuz is our economic choke point. They know it. And they will end us as we know it if we do not give up Israel. The fact that they even have the grace to give us that much is amazing. And so as a result, I want people to understand why this is such a big deal. You would think if this was the rantings and ravings of some crazy person, then no one would give a shit. And I would normally agree. But in this case, they went even further. Now, this, of course, as we know, was translated from Hebrew. I can't hock it up, and I don't want to hurt my throat. However, Gvir really said this. For every tear of an Israeli mother, 1,000 Lebanese mothers must weep. All of Lebanon must burn. Now, I would think after saying that, you really don't need to say anything else. But he kept going. With all due respect to the Americans, there is no respect for the Americans. Israel must make it clear to the entire world that the blood of our sons and the security of our citizens are not forfeit. All of Lebanon must burn. Our supreme duty is to protect the citizens of Israel and the soldiers of the IDF, and this commitment takes precedence over every consideration. I told the Prime Minister, even in our private meetings, for every tear of an Israeli mother, 1,000 Lebanese mothers must weep. Enough with the ping pong in the Middle East, West Asia. You don't win with measured responses and restraint. You need to go berserk, to obliterate, to crush the terror. Yeah, that's pretty forceful language there. And as it turns out, that was not something that was being taken lightly by Iran. Colin, can I have the Guardian article, please? Iran says it is closing the Strait of Hormuz over Israeli strikes in Lebanon. Unclear if threat has been carried out, if move will jeopardize talks with U.S. scheduled for Sunday. It is now Sunday where they are, so who the hell knows what's happening at this moment. Iran has said it is closing the Strait of Hormuz after waves of Israeli strikes in Lebanon in a move that threatens to derail the fragile interim peace deal with the U.S. signed just days ago. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps warned ships not to approach the strategic waterway, which before the war carried a fifth of global oil and liquid gas supplies, citing what it called Israeli crimes in Lebanon and a U.S. violation of commitments to establish a ceasefire there. It was unclear if the threat had been carried out or if it would jeopardize talks in Switzerland scheduled for Sunday that were supposed to start the process of turning the current interim agreement between the U.S. and Iran, signed this week, into a more detailed deal covering Iran's nuclear program. Donald Trump promptly declared the no tolls would be charged on ships seeking to pass through the strait during or after the 60-day interim ceasefire. In a social media post on Sunday, however, he raised the prospect of the U.S. imposing a toll should negotiations fail. U.S. Central Command denied the strait, which Iran is required to keep open under the interim deal. It has been closed. Iran does not control the strait. Oh, it doesn't, huh? Yeah, evidently they do. Iran does not control the Strait of Hormuz. That's what you're going to go with? Traffic, if this is coming from Navy Captain Tim Hawkins, who told Reuters, traffic continues to flow and U.S. forces are monitoring the situation to ensure this remains the case. So now they're lying to the American people. They are telling them that what Iran is doing is not true. So when prices continue to escalate to the point in which no one can afford anything, what's your excuse going to be then? Earlier on Saturday, J.D. Vance, the U.S. Vice President, told Fox News that he is expected to travel to Switzerland in the next couple of days to take part in the negotiations. Pakistan, the key mediator, said that talks would go ahead, and reports from Tehran suggest that a delegate of top officials has left Iran to participate in the negotiations. The continuing hostilities in Lebanon between Hezbollah, which has close ties to Iran, and Israel have emerged as the main challenge to the New Deal to end the war in the Gulf. Israeli strikes on southern Lebanon on Saturday killed at least 16 people. Local authorities said, despite reports of a renewed ceasefire aiming to end the continuing clashes. Lebanon's Civil Defense Agency said its personnel transported 16 dead and 12 wounded to a hospital, adding that they had been working since the early morning hours in the Naboth district. The interim agreement calls for a cessation of hostilities on all fronts, including Lebanon. It has been fiercely criticized by Israeli ministers, officials, and commentators who argue that it stops Israel countering threats posed by Hezbollah. The Israeli military said it was striking Hezbollah targets in response to overnight projectile launches from the Lebanese militant organization. As it has been proven, that is a lie. Those were false flags perpetrated by Israel, claiming that it was Hezbollah, and hence why we're here. Violence flared on Friday after 4 Israeli soldiers, including a senior officer, were killed when a tank was hit by Hezbollah, which said the strike had come after Israel broke a previous ceasefire agreement by advancing. Now, we all know that the case of, let's say, October 7th, and we know for certain that it was a false flag, much like 9/11, that it was perpetuated by its own government in conjunction with dishonest actors for the purpose of expanding their military, political, and social control. This should come as no surprise. This is exactly what we expected, and they're not fooling anybody. The Israeli attacks that followed killed 83 people, local authorities said, across southern Lebanon and the Bekaa Valley. Just think, every day. The exact status of the new ceasefire report to have come into effect locally on Friday evening was unclear. In public statements, Hezbollah has said it will abide by a ceasefire if Israel does. Yeah, that's not happening. But has not said a ceasefire is actually in place. Hassan Fadallah, a Hezbollah parliamentarian in Lebanon, said his group has the right to respond to Israeli attacks. They do. There is a talk of ceasefire for us. What concerns us is that the enemy fully doesn't attempt to attack our country and villages or seek to occupy any new position. The most recent round of war between Hezbollah and Israel began days after the U.S. and Israel launched strikes on Iran on February 28th, with Hezbollah firing rockets and drones at civilian communities in northern Israel, and Israel seizing and occupying large swaths of southern Lebanon to establish a buffer zone. The continuing violence and diplomatic back and forth over the planned talks between Iran and the U.S. have fueled skepticism that the definitive end could be found for a regional war that has killed at least 7,000 people that we're aware of, sent energy prices soaring, and threatened global economic chaos. Look, economic global chaos has already been threatened, but as we know, we haven't even seen just how much worse this is going to get. Supply chains take time to catch up as far as pricing is concerned. So the worst is yet to come. It will get worse. And now, because of this latest setback, it will get even worse. The interim U.S.-Iran agreement signed this week called for the U.S. to lift its naval blockade in return for the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, which was closed to most shipping by Tehran shortly after the beginning of the conflict. Neither Israel nor Hezbollah are signatories to the deal, which calls for a halt to military operations in Lebanon and for the country's sovereignty to be respected. Netanyahu, Israel's prime minister, has vowed to keep Israeli forces in southern Lebanon until any threat to Israel is eliminated. In other words, never. Hezbollah has refused to halt its attacks unless Israel commits to withdrawing from Lebanon, which Iran says is also a condition of the deal. Despite the violence in Lebanon, Vance said he was confident the ceasefire agreed in Washington's 14-point deal with Tehran would hold. Yeah, it didn't hold very long, did it? And that he had no evidence that the strait was closed. I expect that I will leave sometime in the next couple of days, but you know, it's always a delicate coordination dance in the diplomatic protocols. He added that the U.S. negotiators, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, Tweedledee and Tweedledum, had been in Switzerland for a few hours dealing with some of the technical elements of the negotiation. Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson Ismail Bagahi, however, signaled that little progress would be made until Iran was convinced the U.S. was fulfilling its commitments under the deal. This trip is therefore about demanding that the other side fulfill its obligations. The interim deal gives negotiators 60 days to come up with a nuclear agreement, but that can be extended. Many observers warn that it will be very hard to reach an agreement on such complex issues within 2 months. The 2015 nuclear deal, which Trump scrapped during his first term, took more than 18 months to negotiate. Well, where does that leave us? It leaves us in a predicament that I'm not sure the average citizen or government official has fully grasped as of this moment. What we are dealing with, full stop, is a very clear-cut decision. We have two choices. We either break away from Israel or Israel will break us with them. That's the choice. There is nothing else. And Iran has made that abundantly clear that that is the way this is going to go. Because one of the things, ladies and gentlemen, that you also have to recognize is that despite all of the Hasbara rhetoric that we have heard time and again, and if you haven't smashed that like button, please do so. We're almost at 400 viewers. Really appreciate your support. You know, the thing that you have to remember about this is that the people who really know what's going on, the people who are not, who, you know, pretend to be one way in front of the cameras, another way in private, the Israelis understand the ramifications of what they've done. And they understand that the second we are not there to protect them is the second that they're finished. And their end is coming sooner than they think. Because now we are facing an economic catastrophe that we cannot get ourselves out of. All of those years, congressional session after congressional session, we allowed laws to be written in favor of not just the rich, but the super rich and powerful and all world knowing and controlling entities that run our country and the world. And as such, one of those major entities was big oil. And because of our attachment to fossil fuels and the lack of detachment to clean energy like nuclear, solar, wind, geothermal, hydro, and the like, has resulted in our energy grid being so outdated compared to others like China, even Russia, obviously a lot of Europe, especially Germany, Japan, Australia, and the like. And what's the lesson? The lesson is we're basically fucked. And so now we have to make a choice. As a nation, we have to make a choice. It's either Israel or it's us. Iran has made it clear. Israel's actions are no longer tolerated, and they are on their own, unless we want to go with them. I don't want to go with them. Whatever happens to them once they are no longer within our crosshairs, that's our responsibility, is to figure that out. But here I say today, and I say to everybody, and I cannot be more clear about this, Israel has met its match because we've met our match. Iran holds the key, and history has always shown that the same pattern repeats itself. It's not the, well, let me put it this way. History doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. The US dollar is being debased, and our military has overexpanded as bad as any in history. Genghis Khan, the Roman Empire, you name it. But let's be clear. We knew we were going to get to a point where Israel was going to drag us to the edge of a cliff. And now we're there. And we have to decide whether we're going over the cliff or we're going to cut Israel off. That is our only choice. We have no other one. So, for everybody out there who has thinking that they could split the difference somehow, you can't split shit. The decision, the die has been cast. The decision will be made. Israel or us? Choose wisely, because anyone who is choosing Israel is an enemy of this nation, should be treated as such. When push comes to shove, you will know who is on the side of justice and who is on the side of tyranny. Remember, one of the biggest issues that we face as Americans is understanding the class war. The class war is everything, and it always will be. The overwhelming majority of the Zionists in this country, particularly the Jews, are of an affluent class. In their mind, they will not be directly affected by what's going to happen to the average person. They don't care. It's not like they ever did. But the average person makes up the overwhelming majority, if not an overwhelming supermajority of the population now. And their ability to subjugate the masses may be finally coming to an end, because more and more people are starting to notice the reality of our predicament. When you bite off more than you can chew, as our country did supporting Israel in their efforts to go after Iran, Iran was always holding the cards. We just didn't realize it until it was too late. And now they know that, and now we know they are. And as a result, they are playing for keeps. And do I think that Iran has a nuclear weapon? I'm sure they do. But like a lot of other countries, they are willing to wait us out, just like Russia is willing to wait us out. You saw the latest attack by NATO, because that was a NATO bombing campaign in Russia. That wasn't Ukraine. And the reason why so many of these nations show restraint is because they know that the US is not going to be the world's hegemon in the very near future. So we have a choice. Either we lose it all, or we lose a lot, but we maintain some semblance of a world power. But in terms of the world power, those days are over. How we adjust is going to be the key. And a lot of economic pain, which is already here, is going to get worse. But we have an opportunity to break free of the stranglehold that has been keeping us in perpetual torture for far too long. Will the American people wake up to that reality? Is the big question. I hope so, but we're running out of time. And so tonight, I want to address something that I have been trying to emphasize to people for a very long time, and that is, in the two-party duopoly system that we live in, we are at the mercy of having two wings of the same bird. Only one wing of the bird is more presentable and exhibits a sort of decorum that is acceptable to the masses. Remember, no one anywhere is entitled to be comfortable. Comfort is a privilege. And all too often, people that have it think it's a right. And as such, Kyle Kulinski, who I know personally, he and I obviously have a lot of differences in terms of our political philosophies and how we do things. Unfortunately, for him and Crystal and a lot of others, protecting their brand is a priority above all others. And when it is painfully clear that this sort of protection racket of elements within the Democratic establishment is clear, you can't ignore it, because we all know how bad these things get. The wolf in sheep's clothing. That's the problem. The sentiment that had Kamala Harris been president, that none of this would have happened. Smash that like button, my friends. Please, please smash it. It's just not true, because we already had the precedent set. It was already set for almost a year and a half by the time Trump took over. That's a long time. That's not just a few minutes. And foundationally, the Biden-Harris administration could have stopped this dead in its tracks if it wanted to, but it didn't. And so this suggestion that we were somehow going to avoid what we're in now as a result is hogwash. Do I think it wouldn't have been as in your face? No. In fact, I think the Harris administration would have done a much better job at hiding this activity. But here's what Kyle had to say. Again, I understand why he's doing it, but it doesn't mean he's right.
A 0% chance that Kamala Harris would have blown up random dinghy fishing boats in the Pacific and the Caribbean, which Trump has now done dozens of times, hundreds of times, killed at least 200 people doing that. There is a 0% chance Kamala Harris would have carpet bombed little girl schools in Iran.
You're probably right. Kamala Harris wouldn't have done that, but somebody in her administration would have. And there would have been plausible deniability. And they would have blamed it on somebody else. How do we know this? Because the worst elements of these attacks were taking place in the first year and a half, when the Biden-Harris administration was in charge. And they were doing unsightly types of crimes against humanity. This is a reminder that when push comes to shove, tribalism is still a major problem in politics. There is a tendency, a propensity, if you will, to fall in with the crowd that makes you comfortable, sharing similar ideas, ideals, policies, and as such, you'll do the mental gymnastics needed to convince yourself that because Trump is so coarse and crass and gauche, that if Harris was there and she was conducting herself in the I'm speaking kind of decorum that she displays that I find utterly contemptible, but maybe you like, no, it's a very big problem. In fact, it's worse when somebody like Harris is in power because, again, way too many people go back to sleep. And at the same time, you would have two rules of thumb. You would have all of the Democratic establishment and its people defending her in a way that would not be happening on the right. And the split that has occurred as a result of this genocide cannot be denied. But the idea that you think that these decisions are being made arbitrarily by the commander-in-chief, Kyle, I know you know that that's not the case. You know that that's not how this works. And yet, to your 2 million plus subscriber audience, you want them to believe that that's the case. Or, and I do think this is the big turn of fair play, a lot of these content creators that are high up, and Kyle is one of them, you get directives, you get talking points, and you are told to espouse a certain message. And in the case of we need the Democrats back in power, we need to lay the foundation for AOC or Ro Khanna to run for president, then this is what they do. They justify it. They figure an angle and just go with it and suggest that, oh, well, if Harris was there, it'd be bad, but it wouldn't be as bad. No, it's pretty bad. He has more to say.
Zero. There's a 0% chance Kamala Harris would have done a crypto scam coin rug pull on her own fucking supporters. 0% chance.
Now, I would agree with him on that. But that's also because people that are really high up there, that are really connected, don't need to do scams like that. Again, you surround yourself with the worst types of people like Trump does, and meme coins, scam coins, that becomes the order of the day. That doesn't take away from the financial crimes that they're all guilty of. Some are just a little bit more offensive than others. So in that regard, I understand where Kyle's coming from, but that's not in any way to defend what this abhorrent behavior actually is and why they're getting away with it. So let's be fair about that.
Don't give me this false equivalence bullshit. And in this case, it's not even false equivalence. He's flat out saying Trump might still have been the better option. There's no fucking planet where Donald Trump was the better option over Kamala Harris.
And I'm going to tell you why that's not true. Because of the fact that Trump is now there. And we have been saying for a very long time that we were headed for a revolution, that there is no way conceivably that we were not heading this to where we're going now. But somebody like Harris would slow it down in a way that Trump would simply accelerate it. The financial crimes are so in our face, are so deliberate. You saw what happened at UFC 250. One of the guys was basically threatened, probably with his life, for exposing the attempts at insider trading, if you will, on UFC fights that Eric Trump was trying to do. That type of criminal behavior would be so much more protected if Kamala's administration was in power right now. And you know that, Kyle. You have to rip off the Band-Aid. You cannot keep this going on. It's insane. And in a way, you are defending it. That may not be your intention, but that is what you're doing. And you should be called out for it.
You believe that? Your brain is motherfucking figgy pudding. Let's be serious. A little bit too much TRT, a little bit too many steroids, and a little bit too much alpha brain, and now all of a sudden, you're the world's dumbest man. Because this is completely and utterly unacceptable. Spare me. Or say the real thing. Say what you actually think. Black woman, not comfortable with the whole black woman thing. Because that's probably what they're actually feeling.
You see, when you decide to go down that road, that's when you know you've lost. There is not enough of a percentage of the population, despite what a lot of people think, that truly care about that anymore. Are there ones that care about it? Absolutely. There are millions. But you know what? A lot of it is still tribalism. As of this moment, Byron Donalds is going to be the governor of Florida. Florida is going to have a black man as their governor. So again, I am not buying into this angle that is typically employed by those that are at the tippy top of the Democratic establishment in independent media. And that is just how it is. So to make the suggestion that the sole reason that you decided that you can't vote for Kamala Harris is because she's, and I'm not even getting into the whole thing about what culture or whatever she is. She is a detestable human like Trump is. And that's a problem. The system is designed so that we can't have nice things. And I don't hear you saying that. Kyle also doesn't like the fact that Joe Rogan stopped taking his calls. He was on the show a few times. Now he doesn't do it anymore. Who knows if that affected him in any way? Economically, who cares? But to suggest that that's the reason, again, you're grasping at straws. There are a lot of other reasons you could go to. Let me tell you what more people care about than Kamala's skin color. They care about that cackle that is nightmare fuel. It's like Hillary Clinton.
Feeling, right? Oh, you're going to let the black woman run shit? Yeah, no, let's go with the fat pedophile, rapist, war criminal. I'm sure he'll be better. Yeah, the guy born with a silver spoon in his mouth worth hundreds of millions of dollars. That guy who's been a fucking asshole his entire life, who failed up his entire life, that douchebag, yeah, let's go with him.
And again, I want to be clear here, and I'm not even addressing this angle with Rogan because I never talk about Rogan anymore. Rogan made his choice. That's his problem. But Kyle, who is a political aficionado, he does know stuff. He does. We've had I had enough conversations with him to know that he knows his politics for sure. So I would never take that away from him. However, to suggest that we do not have a systemic problem here within the system, and that one of the primary reasons why people chose Trump over Kamala is because Trump promised that he was going to end the wars. I'll totally end the wars. We're gonna do it right. We're gonna be America first. I mean, he did say that. Obviously, he's a liar, but he did say it. And now in politics, it seems like it's just one big game of hot potato. Every election cycle for the past several is one party wins and then the other party wins, and back and forth and back and forth, because people are sick of this. The structure has been set up so that you can't get out of it. It has been designed so that you are stuck. And despite what Kyle says, let us not forget that this is the truth about Kamala Harris. Now, Harris to Jewish voters, all options on the table to stop Iran from going nuclear. I believe it is from the Times of Israel. And then you have in Al Jazeera, Kamala Harris says Iran is the greatest adversary of the U.S. Kamala Harris also took millions upon millions of dollars from the Israel lobby. You know, everybody knows now, for the most part, who Miriam Adelson is, but she's one of several billionaire Zionist mega donors. She just happens to be one that truly bought off Trump and now seems to be pretty pissed at him for not doing exactly as he was told. And who knows how that's going to unfold. But I want to remind you of one of the seminal moments over the campaign season. Colin, if you could cue up that image. No, the one of Harris, that's it. You see, and I don't mean to be graphic, but this is essentially what we're dealing with here. Decorum politics is something that privileged, affluent people seek. They want to feel good about themselves. They don't really want to know what's going on that they are either directly responsible for or are contributing to because they choose not to do anything about it. And this is a prime example of just that. And as I said, if Harris was in power, a lot more people would have went back to sleep than they are now. And that's why this is so dangerous. And that's why you have to be on the lookout for what's coming in the midterms, because you have a lot of people right now that are not aware of how this game is played. They are not aware of how much worse this is actually going to get. And I'll tell you why. And we're going to talk about this with Jen on Monday. DMFI, Democratic Majority for Israel. This is another one of those organizations that typically works with the GOP. However, they have been funding heavily a lot of Democratic candidates in this election cycle already. In those primaries, they have been involved. And so what does that tell you? What it tells me, as it should tell everybody, is that they don't care about the two parties. That doesn't mean anything. And that's why there is going to be an even greater embrace of the Democratic Party by the pro-Israel lobby in the midterms. That's one of the primary reasons why the Democrats are going to win the midterms. Because the corporate infrastructure is moving to their side now. How long will they hold it? I don't know. Who cares? It doesn't matter anymore. That doesn't mean that elections don't matter. But the whole idea of playing for a team, that's got to die. To each and every one of you out there who still thinks that the way that this is going to be done, that the way we're going to save ourselves is by voting blue. No. In fact, If you think voting blue is the solution, you've already lost. Now, there are blue candidates out there that are definitely worth supporting. But in the grand scheme of things, it's very small because the system has been completely engulfed. It's captured. It's finished. Revolution is inevitable. And we're heading there because I'm not convinced that the powers that be are going to back off of the support for Israel, even at the risk of economic catastrophe. And if that is the case, then revolution is inevitable. It's where we're headed. And I don't like the fact that so much of the political real estate in terms of the conversation has been ceded over in a direction where there are certain people that are given this sort of latitude to kind of move in on a space that, you know, we really should be very concerned about, because that's essentially what's happening here. I have been focused, like really focused on this particular story regarding Gabe Einhorn and Austin Franco. And I think that this story is very telling because you have an entire media ecosystem that is designed to protect the Zionist cause. That's every corner. If it's corporate, it's covered, and it will be protected. Now, keep in mind that these guys, and I think I briefly mentioned this regarding Einhorn. You see, the Einhorns are in commercial real estate, multifamily housing, which is an area that I'm involved in. And when they came out and discussed exactly what it is that they're doing to become rich, it's dystopian. They have relationships with the multinational banking corporations to basically check people's bank accounts. I mean, talk about violation of habeas corpus. At least that's how it sounds to me. But this is what they've done. And so while everybody's focused on one young man saying, I'm sorry, I just don't want to work for a Jew. Okay, who cares? But apparently that is the only thing that matters, not what these guys are up to. So I want to show you why this is so serious and the lengths that they went to cover this story. So here we go.
And one of those owners of that company, Emily, that we just watched, he said, I felt bad exposing him because I thought he could have made a mistake, and he really doesn't believe that wholeheartedly. I'm glad we know this individual's name. I'm glad he was exposed.
Indeed. And the brothers are so generous and graceful, certainly more than I am, because I do want his life to be ruined. I agree with you. It is a permissive structure. And parents, what are your children putting out there? What are the people that have been in your household putting out there online and to their friends? What has been fomented? Because clearly there is a disconnect. Somehow this person learned that there is an audacity that you can have with this anti-Semitism. That's what I found so shocking. Guy and I toured Poland together last May, and I whenever I see things like this, it harkens me back to our trip, where apparently there's been no evolution since World War II. That deep-seated cultural hatred that's been allowed, that's been fostered, has somehow reignited here among the youth.
You know, we've talked about Matt Kim and Peter Saddington, who've been guests on the podcast, talking about what was a really canary in the coal mine moment about 2 years ago, when they talked about members of the Jewish community in the banking system that are able to get no interest loans when no one else can. And whether that is for a very small group of people, it's still for a group of people that are cheating the system, that are breaking the system. And that is the same thing that happens when the Einhorns, you see, the one thing about Fox News or any other major network, anything that's corporate media related, no one is going to talk about the details of their business and what it is that they're doing to get rich. No one will talk about that. Forget that they're Israeli, but obviously that plays a big role. The thing that is a very big part of this equation, is that they're essentially criminals making millions upon millions of dollars, ruining people's lives. But that's not going to be talked about. We'll talk about it because that's what matters. On the other hand, what they want to talk about is feelings and protecting their financial interests. Because in the end, that's really all that matters here, is the financial implications of protecting these individuals. They probably don't even remember their names, but they know it's good for business, at least for now.
And it is sickening. Cornell needs to take greater steps. So do parents. So do online forums. And somehow this 65-pound vessel of hatred needs to know that not only is this not okay, but it's not acceptable socially. Because clearly online and among those kid groups, I keep saying kid, among the youth, they have learned that it's okay, that it's right to have this anti-Semitism. It felt sickening for me to just quote him, by the way. To just say those words, quoting him, felt sick.
I'm really interested to see if Mr. Franco gets a job. Does anyone hire this guy? I really want to follow up on this.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because evidently the young man has already been presented with plenty of job opportunities. So much for that, I guess. However, if you think that they were not going to parade the tiny hat wearers around, trust me, they were going to do it. And sure enough, they did.
Jewish brothers offered to interview him for a summer internship at their startup. He posted this reply: "Not interested in working for a Jew. Thanks." The brothers with this response:
"There's too much hate in the world right now, and to overgeneralize one specific religion or one specific race is never a good idea, because you see people that are across the board from different walks of life that could become friends, that can do business together, that can build a family together. So I never think it's a good idea to overgeneralize in that sense, and I think we need to come together and bring more love to the world."
Well, I'll tell you about bringing love to the world. The love to the world that I will see is when Israel is no longer in our crosshairs, including your curly crosshairs. You see, guys, the whole thing about the tiny hats and the big Star of David, they're props. It's an image that they're trying to sell. Plus, when they're getting so much attention, and to the extent that this attention is going to garner them more financial opportunity, one really has to wonder what the motivation was to bring attention to it in the first place. Or was it all one big setup? Because in many cases, the thing that they are always banking on is the revert back to the same concept of everyone's out to get us, protect us, protect us, protect us. And again, these are not some broke-ass kids who somehow caught a break in life and now they're fighting for their survival. No, these boys are from Teaneck, New Jersey. Now, as I mentioned, Teaneck is one of the more affluent, predominantly Jewish areas of North Jersey, just outside New York City. And it is a community that, in my opinion, harbors Israelis, because this is one of the communities where they do land sales. Yes, that's right. That is what this community is known for. Who's to say that the Einhorn family hasn't bought a few plots of land in Gaza and the West Bank? I'm not a betting man, but if it turns out that they did, it wouldn't surprise me, and I doubt it would surprise you either. But let's hear what else they have to say.
Wow, just wow. CB Cotton's got more on this from New York City. CB?
Hey, John. So Cornell student Austin Franco is accused of sending the anti-Semitic message. And in several online remarks, he appears to be standing by his comments. He was supposed to join an online live stream last night to discuss the controversy, but he backed out at the last minute and wrote a lengthy X post saying it was best for him to put the interview on hold and suggesting his future at Cornell could now be in limbo. The post also reads in part, quote, "I will fight for what I believe is right, not for money, power, or something material, but for the cause itself," end quote. According to startup founders and brothers Gabe and Aiden Einhorn, Franco applied to their company through an online hiring platform and was accepted in the first round. The brothers say Franco sent them the anti-Semitic message through the same platform after they followed up to schedule an interview. The brothers shared screenshots that they say show Franco replying, quote, "Not interested in work for a Jew." Gabe Einhorn initially concealed Franco's identity when posting the exchange online.
Boy, I tell you, if I could go and work for anybody, it's definitely those two guys.
But Franco's identity was later revealed through online comments, and Franco responded once again, standing by his message. The Einhorn brothers tell Fox they only spoke out to highlight anti-Semitism.
The goal really for me in that initial post was just to show the fact that there is clear anti-Semitism in the world. After seeing people try to deny it and tell me that it doesn't exist, I was trying to show an example of, look, this is clearly anti-Semitism. You can't argue.
Okay, so one has to ask themselves, where does the hatred stem from? Does it just come from nowhere, out of the clear blue sky? Or is there a legitimate reason why people have a distrust, a dislike for certain types of Jewish people? And the Einhorns are proving in real time why so many people have had enough. These are not people that are dregs on society, that are just sitting at the bottom rung and can't provide any. No, these are people that are in control. They have power, they have money, they have influence, they have it all. And yet they're victims. If I were Einhorn and it truly wasn't about Jewish supremacy, and he wrote a message saying, "I'm not going to work for a Jew," I'd be like, okay, that's fine. You'll regret passing this opportunity up. That would have been the proper response, but nope, no way. Can't let that go. Go for the throat. Go right for it. And so that stemming hatred, there's a reason that that's happening, but we'll finish this out.
Against it.
In a statement, Cornell University condemned anti-Semitism and said its Office of Civil Rights has opened an investigation. Fox reached out to Austin Franco for a comment and was referred back to online remarks. John.
Mr. Franco may find it difficult finding another internship after that. We'll see. CB Cotton, CB, thank you.
Good, Goyam. You did your job. And this is why I want people to understand, because I'm going to be very clear about this. I don't trust Nick Fuentes. I think he's an op. He's probably a Fed. He's also a little bitch. But aside from all of that, I understand why people gravitate to this super pro-white individual. I understand why there are people like my friend Osiris, who is black and loves him, thinks he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I don't agree, but I understand why this very gifted orator is as enthralling as he is for a lot of people. And why, when people ask, why is it that this hatred is happening? It's not hard to see why at all. It's actually very obvious. And here's why.
19-year-old college student gets annihilated from orbit by a billionaire? This is totally insane. What kind of billionaire thinks like this? This is somebody worth $3 billion that, by the way, is in the tech defense industry. He's making software that is used by the NSA, the CIA, the FBI, Social Security, the Treasury Department. He regularly liaises with the most rich and powerful people in the world, and you need to crush a teenager because he said he doesn't want to work for Jews? It's the equivalent of like a shit post on Twitter, and a billionaire wants to ruin this guy's life?
Now, here's something that I wasn't aware of, but I'm not entirely surprised by it either, which is also why, as I've said, I do believe that Fuentes is deeply connected in more ways than one. Is it any bit surprising that a 24-year-old is at the beck and call, is connected with the most powerful alphabet agencies, not just in our country, but the world over? This is not by accident. And they don't just think up this technology. They're not that smart. I'm usually a pretty good judge of that. But they're connected. And being connected is everything. And when you believe that you are supreme, when you believe you're chosen, and everybody else is beneath you, you will do things like this. Now, are the Einhorns billionaires? I think he may be confusing him for David Einhorn, who is a billionaire software developer, but I looked this up. They are not related. Although maybe the Einhorns just happen to love the tech world. Whatever it may be. He's a very rich and powerful young man going after somebody who doesn't have anything. But this is the mark of the Zionist cause. Crush everybody, no matter who they are, no matter how high up or how low down you may be. If you're in our way, we're coming for you. And now that they have ceded so much real estate that they don't know what the hell to do, this is what happens. So again, it is understandable why this information matters. I didn't know this. Is it surprising? Not at all.
This is the definition of unhinged, deranged, bloodthirsty. And let me tell you, this is how these people think. They have no mercy, no scruples. They are ruthless. He says, you're being weak. The only way a people prevails is with strength. Be a strong Jew. Don't be a weakling that reacts in a way that gets us attacked more. Be a man that makes them afraid to attack your people. So who are Joe Lonsdale's people? Who are Gabe Einhorn's people? Well, maybe this is a foregone conclusion, but he's not talking about Americans. He's not talking about Westerners. He's not talking about white people, which Jews sometimes say they're white. He's not talking about Europeans here. He's not talking about people of Western civilization. He's not talking about Christians because he's not a Christian. Think about it. A 19-year-old college kid somewhere in Virginia texting his boss, I don't want to work for Jews. Who knows if that's even serious? Like I said, teenagers say a lot of nonsense like that. And a billionaire that runs one of the top 10 most valuable tech companies in the world, their top customers are the biggest intelligence agencies in the world, that kills people for a living, is saying, oy vey, a threat to my existence. We have to crush this guy.
So it turns out, and this is another layer to the story that I don't think many people were aware of, but now we are. Einhorn's venture is backed by Joe Lonsdale of Palantir. I mean, you can't make this up. And that's why when you see certain stories make it to the forefront of the news cycle, you have to ask yourself, why are they getting there? What exactly is it that they are providing in terms of information? Where one has to ask themselves, why is this becoming featured news right now? It's not even that important. According to a few accounts, one guy by the name of Adam, he's a Middle Eastern guy. I really like him a lot. He's got a really good X account. He said that Fox News has run 6 separate segments this past week on this story. 6. You don't think somebody's in their ear telling them that you really need to cover this? Of course they are. That's how this happens. That's why this is such a big problem. And that, in conclusion, is also why when one has to ask themselves why there is this lack of understanding from the average American when they maybe just casually are asking themselves, why is it that there is such fervent anti-Jewish hatred in the United States, right now especially? And the answer is pretty simple. And I've been on this for a while. And Max, I totally agree. I definitely agree. There is a reason that I think that this is the case. Zionism can only survive if it's intertwined with Judaism. It can't survive any other way because the whole concept is outlandish, insane, and just outright wrong. So to believe that there isn't a hierarchy of sorts that exists within this infrastructure that wants it that way, believe me when I tell you there is. Now, you guys know where I stand on Dan Bilzerian. At the end of the day, would I take him on politically in place of Randy Fine? Yes. Do I think he's going to win? Probably not. However, there is something to be said for when you document individuals who are part of a greater problem, which is the Zionist cause. Now, a lot of them happen to be Jewish, for sure. But Bilzerian put a list together that I don't know how many people are familiar with, but this is pretty extensive, and it says a lot. Who controls the media? Updated list. Meta owns Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger, Threads, Oculus, Meta AI. Meta is controlled by Mark Zuckerberg, who is Jewish. Now, is Mark Zuckerberg a Zionist? Well, not only is he a Zionist, but he's somebody who works very closely with the state of Israel. In fact, I think there was a story that we almost covered the other day regarding decisions that Meta has made through Facebook in conjunction with whether or not certain stories regarding Israel and Iran were even allowed to be shown on the platform. They removed them, said, nope, can't have them here. No more. Israel asked Facebook to censor Iran war content. Internal documents show. Yeah, that kind of gives it away, doesn't it? Let's go back to the list. Alphabet owns Google, YouTube, Android, Gmail, Chrome, Pixel phones, Nest smart home devices, Fitbit, DeepMind, Gemini AI, Waymo self-driving cars, Verify, Calico, Wing drone delivery. Alphabet is controlled by Larry Page and Sergey Brin, who are both Jewish. Larry Page is, I believe he's Oracle. I think he's Larry Ellison's partner. Let me confirm that. Sergey Brin is one of the richest men in the world. I believe he's a major Democratic Party contributor. Larry Page, is CEO of Google. And Sergey Brin is the former president of Alphabet. Now, those of you who have been following our channel, you know we've been hit upside our head for ever covering anything regarding this. And we get stuck in the corner, so to speak, and no one knows we're here. Tonight, we're having a decent night for the first time in a while. We just passed 800 live viewers. If you haven't hit that like button, guys, please do so. It really helps a great deal. TikTok, U.S. algorithm and infrastructure is controlled by Oracle. Oracle is controlled by Larry Ellison. I don't need to say anything else. Hookup apps, Match Group. Obviously, we remember Match.com. Match Group owns Tinder, Hinge, OkCupid, Match, Plenty of Fish, Meetic, The League, BLK, Archer, Our Time, and was founded by Barry Diller. Now, there's a couple of different Dillers out there, but Barry Diller he's like a wannabe Rupert Murdoch is the way that I would describe him. He's a very wealthy man. He came up through Fox. He's also the chairman of Expedia. He is married to Diane von Furstenberg. So Barry Diller's been around for a long time. Barry Diller is also one of those guys who really, really, really hates paying taxes. Really hates it. So Barry Diller, in his haste, founded Fox with Rupert Murdoch. Grindr was founded by Joel Simikai, who is Jewish. Grindr is I believe it's a gay dating app. Bumble was founded by Whitney Wolf, who is also Jewish. Pornography, OnlyFans, owned by Leonid Radvinsky, who is Jewish. Was Jewish. He died a very painful death, and I would say he deserved it. Vixen Media Group owns Blacked, Blacked Raw, Vixen, Tushy, Deeper, Jonathan, founded by Greg Lansky, who is Jewish. Ilo, Mindfreak, owns Pornhub, YouPorn, RedTube, Brazzers, Reality Kings, Digital Playground, Men.com, Sean Cody, TubeBait. Solomon Friedman is the owner of Ilo, and he's Jewish. Gamma Entertainment owns and operates Adult Time, Pure Taboo, Wicked, many other affiliated studios, platforms. It was founded by Carl Bernard, who is Jewish. Movie, TV, and news. Warner Brothers Discovery owns WB, HBO, CNN. Not anymore. CNN is now owned by Larry Ellison. DC Studios, so they trade. DC Studios, Cartoon Network, Discovery Channel, TNT, TBS, Max, formerly HBO Max, once Skinamax, Adult Swim, HGTV, Food Network, Animal Planet. Warner Brothers is run by David Zaslav, who is Jewish, yes. Disney owns ESPN, ABC, Marvel, Lucasfilm, Pixar, 20th Century Studios. Doesn't own Amblin, which became DreamWorks, which is Mr. Spielberg. Disney, Hulu, National Geo. Disney is run by Bob Iger. Head of Disney, and the reason why you can no longer afford to go to Disney World. Paramount Global owns CBS, CBS News, CBS Sports, local CBS stations, film studios, Paramount, Paramount Animation, cable networks, MTV. Boy, wouldn't we give for the old days of MTV? Nickelodeon, Comedy Central, BET, VH1, CMT, TV Land, Smithsonian Channel, Logo TV, Pop TV. Streaming premium, Paramount Plus, Showtime, Pluto TV, major franchises, IP, Top Gun, Mission Impossible, Star Trek, South Park, SpongeBob, SquarePants, Transformers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Paramount Global is controlled by Sherry Redstone. Comcast owns NBC Universal, NBC, Universal, Peacock, MSNBC, CNBC, Telemundo, Sky, DreamWorks, Xfinity. Comcast is controlled by the Roberts family. Amazon owns Amazon Prime, MGM Studios. Wake up, Colin. Twitch, Audible, IMDb, Amazon Music, Ring, Blink, Amazon Echo, Alexa, Kindle. Amazon is run by Andy Jassy. No, Amazon is owned and operated by Jeff Bezos. Andy Jassy happens to be an executive, but the interests, the financial interests are the same. AI data centers. This is a big one. OpenAI ChatGPT, run by Sam Altman. I don't need to say anymore. You just need to look into Sam Altman's eyes. Oh, and he's a sexual predator as well, and a rapist. Just saying. Palantir provides advanced data integration, surveillance, AI, and analytics infrastructure used by military, intelligence, law enforcement, and major corporations. Its platforms help organizations combine massive amounts of fragmented data into real-time operational intelligence for warfare, policing, logistics, cybersecurity, manufacturing, and decision-making, making it one of the most strategically influential data and defense technology companies in the world. It was founded by Alex Karp, Peter Thiel, Stephen Cohen, and Joe Lonsdale. 3 out of the 4 are Jewish, and the other gives speeches on the Antichrist, operated by Alex Karp, who, in my opinion, is the most dangerous. I'm not even just going to say billionaire, I'll just say oligarch, because that's really what he is. But in terms of the most dangerous psychopathic oligarch, I think Alex Karp is probably at the top of the list. Oracle owns Oracle Database, Java, MySQL, NetSuite, Cerner, Sun Microsystems Tech. It's important because it owns core infrastructure software that powers governments, banks, hospitals, corporations, and large parts of the internet. Its control of technologies like Oracle Database, Java, MySQL, and Cerner give an enormous influence over the back-end systems modern society depends on. The owner is Larry Ellison. And so what you have here is a list that isn't, and again, what you would have to look out for, specifically with anyone who's going to come on here and call it antiseptic to put a list like that together. But here's what we know for certain. And this is why I can give Bilzerian credit for this, because it wasn't, obviously he didn't, with all due respect, Bilzerian didn't put that list together. Somebody did it for him. He paid it. He put it out there. It's good for his brand. Smash that like button if you haven't, guys. The reason this is important is because virtually every person that I have mentioned on that list can be directly traced to direct support for the state of Israel. And that's a problem, a huge problem, and it affects our daily lives. So how do we disengage? We really can't. That is why revolution is inevitable. You think these people are going to give this up? They're not. They're not going to give it up. But it is our job. It is our job collectively as Americans to work together to make sure that whatever this revolution becomes, it's one that completely disengages this virus, this Zionist virus that has taken over our country. Jewish and Christian Zionists. The Jewish Zionists provide the money, the Christian Zionists provide the flock. Stereotypical as it may be, but that is the reality of the system that we are faced with today. We have a lot to do to get out from under this stranglehold. But that's why we're doing this. Now, on the other side, you have the person that is currently running, or is, let me rephrase, the person that Dan Bilzerian is running against, the sitting incumbent congressman in Florida's 6th congressional district, and one of the outright worst people alive today in politics. Randy Fine, Randy Swine. There was a really good one the other day. I'm trying to remember it. Randy, give me your best nicknames for Randy Fine. But this is important. Randy Fine calls Track AIPAC a terrorist organization. Why would they do such a thing? How much has he taken? Does it have that, Colin? Do we have the list of how much money the swine has actually taken? Randy Slime, Randy Bovine. Yeah, no, we need more. I know there was one. There was like 2 of them that I saw the other day that were really good. I want your Randy. Thanks, Tam. That is a good joke. I want your best Randy Fine euphemisms in the chat. Beagle burglar. That's different. Mary Ploppins is not even trying, just going right for the heart of it. Usury. And that's all we know of at the moment. $516,777. And so Swine doesn't really like Track AIPAC. Why would they? Track AIPAC, friends of the show, Corey Archibald, they've done a really good job. But here's what Randy Swine had to say.
A Muslim terror cell by the name of Track AIPAC, a group that literally tries to radicalize Americans by making up lies about politicians, inspired these people. So I think we have to look at how this propagandizing from overseas affects our American folks and makes them hate their fellow Americans and act in this way. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but hopefully this creates a renewed sense of security for the government, for members of Congress and others, knowing there are these crazy people out there.
All right.
So he is accusing somebody that I know personally, that I have worked with, of being foreign agent, a Muslim. Yeah, I don't think Corey's a Muslim, last I checked. But, you know, everything looks like a Muslim to somebody like Randy Fine because they are a much more in shape and God-fearing person, lives by principle, unlike him. And as such, if you think that Randy Swine is going after Track AIPAC hard, oh no, that's nothing. Miss Loomer is back in the story. And she, of course, has a lot to say. And Colin, I sent you have the wrong clip there. I need the one, I sent you 2 clips of Loomer. That one, it is about Track AIPAC. And she naturally is just somebody who is hired to spew bullshit because that's what she does. Colin, do you have it? No one is freeing Colin. No one. Oh, Colin, why do you do this to me? All right, here it comes. Pull it up, please. So Laura Loomer is just, you know, like so many other people within this movement, the Zionist movement. Again, these content creators, they're just there to get paid. That's why they say the most outlandish things even in this moment. And what's going to be interesting, ladies and gentlemen, is what type of commentary are they going to be throwing at us when it becomes clear that by our continuation of a business relationship with the state of Israel is going to drag our country to hell. What are the paid propagandists going to say? We know what Eyal Jacobi is going to say, or Eyal, or whatever the fuck he calls himself, but that's going to be more common. And as such, they'll say anything. And Loomer is one of those people, but the only thing that Loomer ever does is she goes after people, she attacks them specifically at the behest of the Israel lobby. That's how she gets paid. And she does apparently get paid quite well. And she has a direct line to the president as well. And so what this will be and why they feel the need to go after Track AIPAC is because clearly the organization is doing good work. They're having a direct impact on whether or not people are trusting these federally elected representatives anymore. If they weren't having an impact, they would have no reason to attack them. That in itself is a huge part of this. And I do believe that It's not the only thing that's working. It's not the only thing that we need right now, but it's enough to know that it is making an impact. Because again, you hear what Randy Fine has to say. And if Loomer is saying it as well, then that does matter. It is contentious, to say the least. Colin, you got that clip? I see it, but I don't see it uploaded. All right, well, he says he's almost there. Now, I'm going to say Albert Pike. That's quite a nickname. We really don't have too many mods in the chat tonight. I got to tell you, I guess everybody's taken off. I got to keep an eye on this myself. I hope you guys are all having a good time, though. We've had a really nice crowd tonight. It's really nice to see. I mean, believe me, it's why we do this. We're glad that you guys have a place to come on a Saturday night to have conversation, share some ideas, and have a little fun. But the fun's about to end. Here's Larry Loomer.
This is a wake-up call. They said that they wanted, if you scroll up in this article, it clearly says that round 2 was to make everybody scatter, right? Scroll up a little bit. They wanted to make everybody scatter in a multi-phase attack, and they were going to strike the building and then have a sniper pick certain politicians off. And so, according to this FBI indictment, they actually had photos of the AIPAC tracker in their devices. And so when they were deciding which of the politicians they wanted to kill or they wanted to shoot from a sniper's nest, they were identifying them based off of the AIPAC tracker, the Track AIPAC account that's on X, which, many members of the woke right. I've seen Marjorie Trader Green repost this account before. I've seen Ro Khanna repost it. I've seen Thomas Massey repost it. I have seen people who are diehard Tucker Carlson supporters repost these graphics that is made by this AIPAC tracker account, and you can find it online. If you just type it in on X and you type in Track AIPAC or AIPAC tracker, you'll see these images, and they make it like a bounty, right? They're clearly making these out to be like some kind of a tracker. You see here, this is the official X account for AIPAC tracker, which the FBI said they found some of these AIPAC tracker flyers and mugshot photos that they used to target the politicians on the devices of some of these individuals who were plotting to commit a drone terrorist attack and a sniper terrorist attack at the White House. So it's,
the noticing, and this is, it's good to see you, Sean. This is the thing. I don't know what Loomer's intention is, but I have a feeling, I could be wrong. I think one of the reasons why her numbers are the way that they are isn't just because that the algorithm is obviously feeding people to her, but I think she's got a lot of hate watchers. It's like a lot of people that watch her that just want to hear what other dumb-ass comment she's going to make next. And when she says, y'all should go over and check out Track AIPAC tracker, why would you suggest that when most people are going to look at that and say, yeah, that actually looks like a very good page to follow? Not, oh my God, let's harass the shit out of these people or let's threaten them. No, I think when they see it, they are actually somewhat ecstatic about that prospect. They think, oh, wow, this could actually be a really good place to identify who the anti-Muslim, or no, they're not even the anti-Muslim, the anti-American representatives are in the United States government. We're heading for revolution one way or the other. We might as well know who's against the American people.
It says tracking AIPAC and the Israel lobby's anti-democratic influence on the United States. Donate to our PAC, Citizens Against AIPAC Corruption. So what's really interesting is they say it's the Israel lobby, when in reality, these are American citizens. And I have no problem with people holding people accountable and documenting financing and, trying to identify where people's funding is coming from. But what we've seen is there's a very provocative and violent way in which the AIPAC tracker is operated. And you can scroll.
No, they're not. You see Loomer You just don't like the fact that you are a whore for money. You ate dog food for a $100 bill. It's on the internet. It's forever. Somebody gave you a super chat of $100 and said, I'd like you to eat our dog food. And you did. So what are you not willing to do, I think, is the more appropriate question. And the same rules apply for all of our federally elected representatives. What are they not willing to do to maintain their financial power structure on Capitol Hill and the world over? And Lord knows they're willing to go pretty far in order to maintain it. And you would know very well about that.
Scroll down and you can see the images yourself, right? They promote Islamic jihadist candidates like Abdul al-Sayed, who wouldn't issue a statement about the death of the Ayatollah because, in his words, a lot of his constituents were feeling very sad about it. They demonize people who have taken money from Jewish individuals or donors. They try to create this image and this lie that if you support AIPAC, and it's funny because I didn't even want to have to be in this position to have to defend AIPAC, but here I am. And
oh, Loomer. You didn't want to have to be in a position to defend AIPAC, but here I am. That's all you do. Everything you do is in defense of the state of Israel. So when somebody suggests, oh, I don't want to track AIPAC, and you see the misnomer here, and this is the problem, and Jen and I have been pointing this out time and again, you cannot look at this from the standpoint that the problem here is AIPAC. AIPAC is a problem, for sure. However, the bigger problem is the Israel lobby overall. You know how we told you that there are bigger issues at play here, particularly J Street? Well, that's just one. There's a hell of a lot more. Democratic Majority for Israel, DMFI. I'm sure many of you have heard of it. They are very active in the Democratic primaries right now. No one's talking about them. But that's why Track AIPAC is so important, because they track it all. The Israel lobby's giving them money, then they follow them. Why call it Track AIPAC and not Track Israel lobby? Because AIPAC it's like a call number. People recognize it when they hear it. It's like 10-10-3-2-1 from back in the day, or 1-800-COLLECT. When you hear it, you know it. You understand what it means. But then there are many other layers to it that a lot of people are not familiar with. And so that's why it's one big conglomerate of dozens of these major organizations. Zionists of America, I think that's what it's called. That's like the biggest organization in the United States. You know, we've never properly talked about Israelism, that documentary from a couple of years ago on the live stream, but we should talk about that very soon. It's very telling. I've reached out to some members that were in the documentary. I'd like to have them on. But that's a great example of that. So when Loomer says, I'm not here to defend the Israel lobby, that's what you're paid for. That's why you exist. If anybody should be concerned, yes, Kenman, Simone is one of the people that I reached out to. If anybody should be concerned about Israel's demise, it's Loomer.
And it shows that I actually have integrity, because AIPAC campaigned against me in both of my congressional races. They campaigned against me in District 21 when I ran against Lois Frankel, who is a Jewish Democrat incumbent, even though she is, you know, basically an ally to the Hamas caucus in Congress. I've never been anti-Israel, so I don't even understand why AIPAC campaigned against me to this day. I have no idea why they campaigned against me, but I've always been very concerned about this X account, and I've talked about it on previous episodes as well. I always said the way that these images and these flyers are created, they're like wanted posters, and all it takes is one psychotic individual, like that guy, Elliot Rodriguez. Remember Elliot Rodriguez, who showed up to the Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C. on my birthday 1 year ago. And
one thing you know about narcissistic personality disorder, everything is about you. Everything is about me, me, me. Forget everybody else. Loomer is textbook narcissism. In addition, she ran for Congress in a district she had no chance of winning. So the idea that she thinks that AIPAC was funding against her, no, she was funding, they were funding the incumbent Zionist Democrat. Yeah, they exist. That represents Palm Beach County, Florida. That's Lois Frankel, another geriatric who won't get out of politics. And you claiming that they were spending money against you is, again, narcissistic personality disorder. You had no chance in that race, not just because you're a psychopath, but because you were basic. What did you get? 30% of the vote in a plus 30 D district? You did worse than what the numbers would have suggested you would have done. Maybe it's because you're just misunderstood. We'll finish it up.
And he shot that Jewish couple. Remember, he shot them for no reason other than the fact that they were pro-Israel and they were attending a pro-Israel event. Randomly, didn't know who these people were, walked up to them and then shot the girl. And then as she's crawling away, trying to, fight for her life, shoots her again in the back. I mean, these are crazy people who are clearly trying to incite violence.
No. The only person looking to incite violence are people like you because it pays well. That's all. You have mangled yourself in so many ways. I don't really know how to feel. But if there is anybody who I do think played a role in a very significant way that changed my life, it is Laura Loomer. And Laura Loomer had a friend of hers basically work on her behalf to make sure that I got fired from my job, to make sure that multiple people that I was working with, that I had invested a lot of time, effort, and money into working with, cut me off. And there was nothing I could do about it. And that's the type of vindictive behavior that somebody like Loomer exhibits on a regular basis. And that's why going after Track AIPAC, she has a one-track mind. She wants to hurt them. She wants to hurt this cause, just like she would do to me as she would do to anybody. She is a danger. And much like Ben Gvir having control of levers of power in Israel, Laura Loomer, even if she doesn't have a title, is in control of a power structure in American politics. Everybody could call her names, Larry Loomer, Jigsaw. But she's a Looney Tune, Looney Loomer. And this again speaks to the fatal flaw in the in just overall Zionism, is that they have been able to get away with what they've been able to get away with for as long as they have, because now the reality of their infrastructure that was once strong and almost impenetrable has been pierced in such a way that it's now a gaping wound, and they're not getting out from under this. And so, lo and behold, we come full circle with a story that I was not aware of until just a few minutes before we were set to go live. I would assume, since we have an interesting group that covers the entire political spectrum, this is also one of the reasons why our channel gets capped, because you really can't figure us out in many ways. Yeah, we're left populist for sure, but we don't play in a sandbox where everyone has to think like us. We are very much about having differences of opinion, political philosophy. That's what we do. I would imagine that a lot of you have heard of Lily Gaddis. This is a woman who is a white supremacist and is very proud of using the N-word on a regular basis to whatever end that makes her feel good, whatever. And we love you too, Pure Vita. And we appreciate each and every one of you that are here. Lily Gaddis put out this message earlier today that at the time that I read it, I didn't know what to think, but it was certainly very disturbing. And it wasn't one that I personally thought was true, but you never know. Candace Owens' family reached out to me earlier this morning. It is with deep sadness and sorrow that I am sharing the passing of my longtime friend and fellow political commentator, Candace. But I also can't shake the feeling that this wasn't simply a random tragedy. Excuse me. There are circumstances surrounding Candace's death, especially after Charlie's passing, that raised serious questions, and I hope the full truth comes to light. I want to respect her family's privacy, so I will refrain from sharing any details. Please stay posted. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a very serious statement. That's putting it nicely. Well, it turns out that it was false flag. Colin, can I have Candace's response? Thank you for all the messages of concern, but I am not dead. If I were, it would be entirely appropriate for you to have blamed Israel. Somewhat relatedly, I'm not sure that's a word, but nevertheless, Charlie Kirk was not concerned he was going to be killed by a transgendered furry after a full day of arguing with Zionists about him abandoning the pro-Israel cause. Hope this helps. Why would Lily Gaddis put out a message like that? What exactly was she hoping to accomplish by doing that? Or was she given a message that other people were going to follow suit with because they knew something that we didn't? Was Candace Owens supposed to be killed today? That says a lot. Why would she put out that statement? It really says a lot, but I'm not even sure it's necessarily about Lily Gaddis. Frankly, I don't give a shit what she has to say. I never did. But was Candace supposed to die today? Was there a botched assassination attempt that we're just not aware of? That they were already ready to say, she's gone? I don't know. But it's enough for Candace to have made a statement. And if you're looking for a reason why they felt the need that it was time to finally silence her, this is from the other day.
As we unpacked yesterday, when you run this theory that Charlie's microphone was rigged, suddenly every little oddity in this story, every little oddity from September 10th onward begins to make a lot more sense. To briefly recap, we put together this graphic for you guys. The rigged mic would go a long way in terms of explaining why the bomb dogs were kept away from the scene, okay, because they would have smelled the explosive. Why the crime scene was immediately paved over and the soil was excavated. That's because explosive residue, as we have learned, really hangs on to soil. It is.
And this has always been one of the primary reasons why Jen and I from the jump were thinking, okay, they clearly paved over a crime scene over that weekend. They had to cover it up because whatever was there the real evidence, whatever could be implicating Israel, anybody within the government, they had to keep it under wraps. So they just went in and paved it all. It didn't look right on the surface then, doesn't look right on the surface now. And we still have a lot more questions. She has more to say.
Is highly soil absorbed. So I can show you that here. I think we have a little science article that you can look up. You can research this on your own, but it says that the low water solubility and high soil absorption of PETN in particular, if we think that is the explosive, it would be very problematic and you would in fact need to dig out the soil. Well, my answer to that would be, as I said, running this theory, that it is because of high soil absorption. It is a fixture of PETN explosive. Again, another thing that just sort of would lock into place. Why the feds were searching for Charlie Kirk's necklace, the same reason, explosive residue. Why there appears to be shattered black plastic or glass all over the SUV, which transported Charlie to the hospital. That would be the road bike. That would fit in perfectly. That would make sense. Why there is no available footage or any eyewitness reports of someone seen firing a shot from the Losey building. That's a big, strange anomaly here.
No, it's not. Because the thing about this assassination, which we have always maintained was either done by or at the behest of Israel, the exploding microphone was what we instinctively said, yeah, that's what it looks like. You saw the explosion and the fountain water, the water spout of blood. That's what it seemed like to me. Now, is that exactly what happened? I don't know, but I know what my eyes are telling me. And that's what Candace is saying. And we know that this has been one of their modus operandi in terms of how they kill people. So, the noticing continues.
Why do we not have those people? Yes, I saw him take a shot. Yeah, because no shot was actually taken from the Losey building. Why the feds did not conduct a standard GSR gunshot residue test when Tyler Robinson was brought in, because they knew that he would fail it. And that would not help them in court if Tyler Robinson, who they say they got after a 33-hour manhunt, 33 hours on a minute over, failed the GSR test, especially when they say he was wearing the same outfit. It would also explain why Terrell Farnsworth violated the crime scene immediately, quite boldly, to remove the SD card from that back footage, because it would have captured that the 30-06, which would have decapitated Charlie, did not go through. Also, it would explain why there was unusually no ambulance on standby. I always had an ambulance on standby at my Turning Point USA events when I toured. This is an anomaly. It would answer to that would be because, well, the paramedics would have seen the shattered road mic pieces and all of the other evidence which did not support a gunshot wound.
Agreed. That's why it never made any sense. That's why all of the elements of a setup, the patsy, then you think about the gentleman's name is slipping me that stood up in the crowd and said, I did it, even though he's been to several assassinations and major world events like 9/11. Just happened to be there that day to witness the event. You know, like dancing Israelis. Nothing makes sense. We're all crazy. No, actually, we're not. We just didn't think that George Zinn, correct. Just think that this just came out of nowhere? No. And Sean is right. There's no GSR test from the beginning. And as a result, the second you find holes in the story, you know that it's a work. You don't leave anything unturned. And now we're almost, what are we, 9 months later? 10 months later. And we're no closer. And as a result, we know for sure that it's a work.
That would be the reason why you would just have his security team transport him under this theory. Again, we're thinking while it's still legal to do so. Lastly, it would go some way of explaining why Erica was quick to forgive Tyler Robinson before the world, quicker than she was able to forgive Drewski when she came out weeks later looking like an assassin and saying that, you know, she was so angry at Drewski, much more angry than she was at Tyler Robinson. So bizarre. So bizarre. Well, it's easy to forgive someone if you maybe know they didn't do anything. I could probably forgive someone who didn't do something to me either. I don't know.
Oh, no, we know. We know what we're seeing. We're seeing an attempt to rewrite history, and it's not going to work. In fact, it's pretty telling, like I said, to even come out and make a statement asking, we're all asking, why would Lily Gaddis make that statement unless there was a plan to take out Candace today and it didn't come to fruition? That's possible. That would be my guess. But whatever it was a botched post that she pulled pretty fast. Remember, those are screenshots. She deleted it. But the internet is forever, as we say. And so as a result, people now know that there may very well have been an attempt on Candace's life today, and it didn't, and it failed. What that was, who knows? Whatever her statement was, or why she came out with that, or maybe she felt that she was going to be the first one to mention it because she's in a group chat that suggested that that was the case. That to me says a lot. But this statement by Candace is a reflection of why they want to shut her up. Because now, as the walls continue to close in on Israel, this is what happens. They're just going to go for broke, and they're going to take as many people with them as they can. Could you imagine if Candace was assassinated today? If there was anybody that still had any doubt left in them about whether or not that Israel was the one behind this, that would have obviously been the end. That would have been the end completely. But I still believe that something went down today that they thought they would complete, but it didn't happen. And so credit to Candace for continuing to use her major platform to push forward this much needed narrative about the truth regarding the state of Israel. And then here we are. But remember, the danger we face is going to come in many different ways, because the powers that be, not the people, but the powers that be, are against the interests of everyday people, because they are for the ruling class. And this isn't just a problem here in the United States. Remember, Israel is a microcosm of the entire problem. They just happen to fit in a very important block in the chain. But that's not the only reason. Now, we're going to conclude with what I think is a very telling. I mean, the only way that I could describe this is you have I guess this is an elected official or was an elected official. And this is in Australia. So to our Aussie friends who may be up right now, this one's for you guys. I wanted to get her name. I know that I had, or maybe this is I think it's TRT World. Let me see. Okay, so this person, her name is Georgina Hope Reinhardt. She is an Australian billionaire. Proposed, well, I'm not even going to read it. You'll just listen to the Aussie share her thoughts on exactly why the land down under should be a place for the Israelis.
Townsville made important history years ago as a Navy base at Townsville, helping defend our country in World War II. I understand, and of course, also aircraft facilities of course. I understand many veteran families still live in this area. That important culture, a very important culture, could flourish again if we also offered free land, be that near Prairie if suitable or elsewhere near Townsville, for the Israelis and transport here for their skilled people, immediate families and equipment, and encourage the Israelis to develop and build their advanced war drones and or other advances in defense.
So this isn't just about giving land to the Israelis. This is also about the military-industrial complex. And this, of course, is coming from somebody who does not care about regular people. In fact, she could care less how many people have to die, how many people have to suffer. And she says it so flippantly, with that fucking cowgirl hat on her head. Just need a minute to take it in. To take it all in and to understand how serious this is. We want to give land to the Israelis for nothing, and we also want them to have land specifically for military purposes. This is not some random, Aussie drungo on the internet. This is a rich and powerful individual. And she clearly has influence. Now, you don't hear any hooting and hollering from the crowd suggesting that this is a pretty bad idea, which of course it is. But that's what she's there to do. I hope the Aussies stand up for themselves. Lord knows they need to. We warned you about Bondi Beach. Now you know why.
And or improve upon their Israeli-style domes and manufacture them here to sell to our country to help make our people and critical infrastructure safe.
Make it safe. We are going to give Israel everything it wants in order to make Australia safe? Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. That's why at this point, you really can't get upset about this. You just have to take action. They're not going to stop. The noticing is too obvious, but they don't care. And as I've mentioned a time or two, this is a class war, nothing more. This isn't some average run-of-the-mill Aussie out there spewing nonsense about supporting the Jews. No, this is one of the richest people in the world telling you that we are going to give our land away to Israel for free. And if that's not enough, we're going to also give them land for military testing purposes. Are you noticing enough yet, ladies and gentlemen? because I certainly have. To our Aussie friends, if you're in the chat and if you're paying attention, just understand, perhaps in your land as it is in ours, and maybe it's a global effort, and that's how it comes to its conclusion. This is a revolution or nothing. That's where we're headed. That is the inevitable conclusion of what's in front of us, because they will not stop. But when the economy becomes beyond insufferable as a result of what's happening right now via the Strait of Hormuz, as we bring the conversation full circle, that is essentially what's in front of us. We have to make a choice as a nation. Now, are there ways of uniting? Yes, there is. And everybody's always asking for solutions. BDS is one. Taking your money out of banks, that's another. Collectively organizing similar patterns with people, that's what we do. That's our goal. Now, I think a lot of people are afraid, but no one wants revolution, but revolution becomes necessary. It's like that great line in Interstellar. Can they dock? It's impossible. No, it's necessary. Is revolution possible? Most people would look at the United States and say, no, it's not possible, but it's necessary. So we'll see how it happens. Godspeed to our Aussie friends. Lord knows they're going to need it. What we're going to need is some more support from an amazing audience this evening who has done an amazing job. Patreon.com/revolutionary change. For as little as $5 a month, you can become a supporter of our small but mighty, despite heavily suppressed, yet still growing channel. And obviously, we want to give a big shout out to all of our wonderful supporters who have checked in with us this evening. The Lord knows we've had some really good ones, and I want to thank each and every one of you. A big shout out to Master Yoda with the $2 Aussie on Rumble. The Harris administration would have ensured that boys' schools and co-ed schools would be bombed in addition to the girls' school. Sexism has no place in illegal military campaigns that bomb children. There's one thing we know that the Harris administration would have done. They would have made divide and conquer strategy that much more important to their cause. That much I agree with. Jim Taleb with the $5. Thank you as always, my friend. Spoon Spooky with the £4.99. You are a true warrior. My respect and love always. And to you, my friend, over in the UK, thank you for checking in. Constant Sange with the $2. Is Trump playing 4D chess or is this a psyop? Honestly, I think we're just learning more and more that the presumption that the commander-in-chief is really the one in charge is kind of a falsehood. Al Axwaflood with the $9.99. Too bad we can't run the alternate universe simulation and see who's better. I don't know. Sometimes I think a lot of people think we're living in some type of a simulation, so anything's possible. Kenman, great to see you with the $2.79 Canadian A. Wouldn't rule class crush revolution heavily? Wouldn't ruling class crush revolution heavily? Yeah, they would try. But by the time a revolution is happening, there's only so much you can do if it's obvious that you don't have any other choice. Country is going to have to make that choice. Splash Ken Burger with the $5. It's not red versus blue. It's Epstein's friends versus you. That's good. I like it. And I would agree. No question. Nawal Najer, always a pleasure. And a tremendous thank you. For the $19.99, thank you, Peter. Free Palestine and the world from Zionists. We're working it, my friend. We are working it. Skedward Bobby with the 5 Canadian A. They want to make an example of this young man so others would learn the lesson. Regards to Austin Franco, I would agree they are trying, but I think they're going to fail. So we'll see. Amber Valentine, thank you for becoming a YouTube member. We really appreciate it. Piano Man with the $10. It's always great to see you, my friend. Thank you as always for your generous contributions to the channel. Carson Cruz with the $20. Appreciate you, my friend. Your efforts are always appreciated, as well as Jen's and the rest of the team, as are yours. This type of support helps the channel in so many ways, because again, we are a heavily suppressed channel. Most of you know that. And as I said before, we're not going to change our philosophy. That's not going to happen. We are going to continue to speak truth to power because that's our job. Many of you wouldn't be here if we weren't doing that. If all we cared about was getting paid. There are ways that we can angle our stories and do it that way. But that's not why we're here. If we get paid, it makes a difference because it gives us a reason to keep going and keep growing. Speaking the truth has consequences. It certainly has for me, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Mohammed Ahmed, thank you very much for becoming a YouTube member. It really means a lot. If you haven't smashed that like button, please make sure that you do. As Archangel says, jab it. Whatever you got to do. Got a very special show for you on Monday. Sometimes it just works out that way because scheduling permits. So Monday night, we will be live at 7 Eastern. We will have a double dose of special guests on Monday. First guest, it's been too long. Dr. Cornel West will join us first at the start of the live stream. And then in the second hour, we will be joined by Caleb Malbin. So we've got 2 amazing guests on Monday. And so we all hope that you will be here. And I second Holly's sentiments. We obviously appreciate very much everybody that checked in. And for all of you guys, you'll have a lot to look forward to. We'll have the clips up shortly. This is a very trying time. And it is going to be for a lot of us because, oh, Pirate, it happens. It happens. Thank you for the $2, my friend. Appreciate you. Looks like I'm not going to be able to leave here anytime soon. And listen, I was about to end the show, but you understand how you guys can keep me going. Frontier Disciple with the $6.99 Canadian A. Charlie is definitely alive and well. Snake Eyes movie was prophetic. Audience should look into hologram projectors. This is all Masonic theater. It might be. It could be. But I don't think anybody would be saying that about the Palestinians or the Lebanese or the Iranians. Maybe the Aussies. This is why we talked about from the river to the sea. And now we are asking ourselves, is Charlie Kirk really dead? I think he's dead. That's my opinion. You don't have to agree, but there are too many obvious signs, in my opinion, that says that he is. With that being said, as we do every time we're live. And tonight was one of those nights. You know, it's amazing what the algorithm can do to you because they just like to fuck around. That's the nature of the alphabet agencies. Alphabet is the name of the organization, by the way, that owns this YouTube and Google. That shouldn't be lost on anybody, that they call themselves Alphabet. Remember this. A week ago, last Saturday, we did a live stream that barely hit 300 live viewers. Tonight, we topped out at over 850. And you're telling me that they're not fucking around with us? That they don't just decide who gets to see that this is happening and who doesn't? Of course they are. That's how this works. So when you look at the way that all the other channels that are in a similar vein operate, you look at their numbers comparable to us, and yet somehow they're doing much better than we are. Appreciate you, H2. It's not hard to see. Clearly, we have pissed off some very important, well, not even say important, but let's just say influential people do not like our channel. They don't like the way we talk. They don't like our knowledge. They don't like that we are relentless in pursuit of revolutionary justice. And that's the danger. They can't shut us out completely. When we bark loud enough that they've buried us in a corner, then they have to ease up a little bit because they can't make it obvious. Making it obvious hurts in the long run. They're trying to hold off whatever a revolution may look like. But that's our job. Our job, it doesn't have to be violent. Yes, I do, Sean. But a revolution is simply inevitable. And this is why we said, you're either going to get a peaceful revolution with Bernie, or you're going to get a violent one with Trump. And that has never changed. And lo and behold, everything seems to be coming together now. So buckle up, because the ride's about to get even more rough. Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things we ask you to do. We love you all. We appreciate you all. We will see you Monday with Dr. West and Caleb Maupin and Free Palestine. Good night, guys.